This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.
Lori Vallow-Daybell. At this point, this is what I'm saying. Lori effing Daybell has finally broken her silence in a Dateline exclusive. She sat down for a jailhouse interview with none other than Mr. Dateline himself, Keith Morrison, where she doubled down on her innocence, claimed divine visions of her own exoneration, and continued to insist she did nothing wrong, despite mountains of evidence, a conviction, and life in prison. This is a woman who saw herself as a goddess, thought her own children were zombies, and now apparently she believes she's going to walk free. Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor, joining us to discuss these very genius legal maneuverings. Eric, as a former prosecutor and defense attorney, let's start here. What's your reaction to Lori's first ever interview? And if you were her attorney, how hard would you be face palming it right now? Because saying, Jesus showed me I won't be in prison is not exactly a legally sound defense strategy.
Yeah, you can't. Right. I mean, you can't subpoena Jesus to come and testify for you. So that's going to be a problem. Look, this is perilous. And usually the attorney and the client would do some cost benefit analysis and say, hey, look, what can we gain from doing this interview? Is there a message the public hasn't heard that we think they need to hear that's going to help us? And what can we lose by doing this? And the side of what you can lose, I think, so substantially outweighs the potential benefit in this matter. And so, yeah, I'd be pulling my hair out.
When I saw that Keith has an interview with her the other day, I was shocked. And my first reaction was, what kind of attorney is going to... Oh, she is her own attorney. So it's probably really not that difficult to get an interview with Lori Daybell right now, considering how much she likes to talk. And I guess she's in control of her destiny at this point. Let's watch a quick clip from that Dateline exclusive. It is airing on the 7th of March, 2025. So depending when you're seeing this, you may already be able to go watch it on demand, or you got to wait. I know I am staying in that night to watch this interview. Let's take a quick preview of what we will see on Dateline.
Chad was convicted and he's on death row now.
I understand that, yeah.
But
they have some fascinating stories.
How could you possibly think that Chad would be exonerated after what happened?
The same way I will be exonerated. We will both be exonerated in the future.
Because?
I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven.
Uh-huh.
And we were not in jail. And we were not in prison. And they were still in the future from now.
How did it change the way you view the world?
I guess I always was like a very positive, see the best in people kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched someone that I knew my entire life, do what she did, and it just changed the way I view people. The way that my sister was treated was with hate. That's not even human to do what they did to her.
It's going to be quite the conversation. They've covered this so well from the beginning. Just what's your reaction to that as an attorney?
One thing that jumps out at me is contrast the presentations between Lori Vallow-Daybell and her son in just those brief clips, and think about how a jury might perceive each individual. The son seems sincere and aggrieved and credible. Lori Vallow-Daybell seems like she's in the clouds somewhere in this fantastical world that she's created for herself that in part helped justify in her mind the killing of the children, at least according to some. And so these statements by Lori Vallow-Daybell actually play in to the prosecution's likely theme at the upcoming trial.
Let me ask you how this is going to work, because trials, the pretrial motions, all that, deciding what can be admitted, what can't be admitted, what's going to be an argument, what's not going to be an argument, like we saw in Delphi. That was a prime example, very clear cut. Here's what I want to say. Well, sorry, you're not allowed to say that. This is kind of a similar situation. Lori's like, here's what I want to say. Is a judge going to allow her to argue this stuff in court? I mean, how and why, if it will be?
You know, in most jurisdictions, when there is a pro se litigant, a person who's representing themselves, there are court rules in place that say, hey, we need to relax some of these strictures, some of these evidentiary requirements for this pro se individual to ensure that they get a fair shake, they get a fair trial, that sort of thing. So I think the judge is likely going to lean on the side of allowing in a lot of stuff. Now, if it gets too far afield, certainly the judge could shut it down. But I think we're going to see a fair amount of this at the trial, as the judge wants to be cautious to not overly restrict the defendant's presentation.
I know the big question everybody has is how is, because Idaho, I'm answering my question already. How does she not, or how does this not be argued as insanity? I know Idaho doesn't have the insanity defense, or this is in Arizona, actually, where it's being tried. I know they, too, don't necessarily have quite the same sort of defense. It's similar to Idaho in a lot of ways. But when people see this, I mean, is she basically arguing insanity without arguing insanity?
It very well could be. You know, insanity defenses have strict requirements that have to be met. There are evaluations that have to be done. It is a protracted and involved process. But when you have a pro se litigant who's kind of pretty loosey-goosey about everything, she might get in there and sort of play upon the jury's sense of sympathy. Hey, this person is not all there. And even though it might not meet the threshold of an insanity defense, do we give her some kind of break because of how crazy she seems?
I mean, she's in prison for the rest of her life on the other charges alone. I don't believe she's up for death on this one, is it? I don't think it's a capital case, technically, right?
I'm not aware of them bringing the death penalty on.
So, I mean, she really has nothing to lose either way on any of this, other than just more of her dignity, which is pretty much gone at this point. Just getting out there and making these arguments and getting in court, there are certain rules of decorum in a courtroom, and I can't imagine she's going to be following them. I mean, could this thing, without constantly, Lori, you can't say that. Lori, you have to wait. Lori, you got to do this. Just constantly reminding her just how you have to handle this. Or as you said, you know, sometimes these rules are relaxed when you have the defendant themselves acting as their own attorney. Are they more gracious on those sort of things? Or at some point, is it going to be like, look, this, you've crossed a line. I can see her saying something that she's not supposed to be able to say, and really affecting this case in a way where the judge is going to say, you're out. Am I insane for thinking that, or where do you think this could go?
Oh, sure. I think there are going to be ample opportunities for the case to completely devolve during trial, and those will come from Lori Vallow-Daybell. And look, she has her position, and she seems like pretty... or she's feigning righteousness about it, and perhaps she really believes it. I don't know. So she wants to get it out there. She did this interview. And so certainly she's going to have that tendency and that motivation at trial to try to get that stuff in front of the jury too. The judge is going to have to lock it down at some point, especially when we start getting into talks about the metaphysical and otherworldly stuff that just have zero relevance or evidentiary basis in the upcoming trial.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.